Yes, good afternoon, sir. My name is Manya Pius and I'm here to demonstrate how my C program works to compute the roots of a quadratic equation. So to begin with is the first line of code, which says include, then the statement that follows include on the first line says standard input output dot h or dot header. It tells us that we are going to use inputs and outputs, and this line always appears in each C program, indicate that we're going to deal with inputs and outputs. Then second line, we are importing a math library. Since we are going to use some math functions like square root, now we are going to import a math library. Then the fourth line of code tells us it's a main. It's just that function that we always use when creating a C program, so it always appears. Then the next line tells us that we have inputs. We are creating variables, and the double indicates the precision of these inputs, and there will be floating point numbers ABC. Yes. Then the user will be required to input A, B, and C at the prompt when you're running the program. Then print a statement that the user reads and inputs the coefficients A, B, and C. Now, when you look at the statement under the print statement, it says scanf. Scanf is a function that helps us deal with inputs. It's a function used for reading inputs from a standard input. So when the user inputs A and B, the AND symbol before the variables allocates the location for these variables, and they will be used to run. Then after, as a requirement from the question, we are required to test whether the first coefficient A is non-zero. So we test, or we put in a logical test that if A is equal to 0, then we proceed, but if not, we return or print on the screen that the valid input A must be non-zero for a quadratic equation. Return 1 tells us that if A is 0, so we return that statement. So we proceed. If A is non-zero, we proceed the discriminant, which is 4, which is B squared 4 minus AC. So the discriminant, it is of data type double, so it's also a floating point number with a precision. So after that, after calculating the discriminant, we proceed and test the logical test that if discriminant is greater than 0, we proceed and calculate the first root, which is also of data type double precision. So root 1 will be equal to minus b plus square root. So square root comes from the math library. Square root of the discriminant, then everything divided by 2a, or 2 times a, which is a math operation. So this is a text editor I use, VS Code. So if I click here, then we go to the command prompt. Go to we use the you go to the location of your file, or in this case, which is the desktop for my case, and this program is in the file called git. So there. So if I use a compiler, GCC, which is a compiler for C program, then my program is called program.c. So if I compile it, so there's no error, so it is compiled, and after being compiled, it creates by default here it's not showing, but by default it creates an executable file which is a.executable. So when I run it, it prompts the user for coefficients a, b, and c. So if I put a to be 1, and also b to be 1, and c to be maybe -6. So it prints that the first root is 2 and they are real and distinct. So both roots are real and distinct, so they're not complex or they are not equal to each other. So the first root is 2 and the second root is -3. So that means our program is a success. If you go back, so if the discriminant on this line, if the discriminant is not greater than 0, so that means less than 0, so you proceed to the less if, I mean the else if. So and the logical test is if discriminant is equal to 0, then the roots are real and equal to each other, so it is one root. The root 1 is equal to root 2. Yes, then if also the statement is not true, then the compiler proceeds to this else statement saying that then we compute. So that means this is a comment, this is how we comment in C with 2 backslashes. So if this statement is true, statement here is true, then so it is a complex. We have the real part and then the imaginary part here being calculated. So proceed and print, and they will be of this format. They will be rounded off to this format, which is also precision. Then if all these programs is success, then this return says that we return the whole function, then exit. Yes, that's a simple explanation I could come up with. So our program, we have seen that it runs properly. If I clear the screen here and I rerun the file again, which is executable .exe, mean executable, so we'll be asking for inputs 1, maybe 3 and 5. So here the roots are complex. We have the negative, the real part is negative, and the complex part is positive, which is 1.66i.